Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, we're going to be looking at creating our own sap green instead of buying it already pre-made. Especially when it comes to portrait painting and landscape paintings, that's a color that's used very frequently because it's a beautiful transparent color that's dark and it's not super intense like the phthalo colors. You can buy it already pre-made, and it's different mixes across different manufacturers, but even specifically with DecoArt, the Sap Green is different from the traditions to the DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. So I'm going to show you basically how to make up your own Sap Green using core colors that will be consistent. It doesn't matter what brand you use or even what line that you use. So on the table, we're going to be using, for this particular lesson, the DecoArt Americana Premium Acrylics. And I'm using Phthalo Green Yellow, Hansa Yellow Medium, Burnt Sienna, and Titanium White. And I just put some matte medium on here just to help make the paints a bit more transparent if you need to. And I'll talk about that in a second. And so I'm going to move these out of the way. And this is the color we're looking at matching to. And I had this chart here because when it comes to portrait painting, there's some core colors that I would say sometimes are not available and sometimes are only available in mixes. So I have videos to show how to make those. So Sap Green is this one. And I've got my chart here. You can use an art journal, you can use your own grid paper, it doesn't matter. So I've got the colors laid out here. So for the colors, and this is really important, to have access to the actual pigment information on the back. And with these ones here, they're all single pigments. So Phthalo Green Yellow is PG36 and Hansa Yellow Medium is PY73, both transparent. Burnt Sienna is PBR7, which is opaque, and then Titanium White, of course, is PW6, which is opaque. And with those core, what I call core colors, the green is not really a core color. I mean, you can make it with using phthalo blue. I am going to show in another tutorial on how to do that with phthalo blue. The first thing we want to do when we're creating our mixes, because looking at this visually, digitally, the colors are not always going to be the same depending on monitors are all configured differently, etc., etc. So what you want to do is you want to take your colors and you want to basically chart them. So we'll start with the Phthalo Green, and I'll just put that right here. Phthalo Green Yellow, you can see it's very transparent. So you're going to put this in your chart. And I also, before I go any further, I also have videos on how to choose your limited palette. I already have that available, so you can look at that to decide if you don't have Phthalo Green Yellow what you can use. But Phthalo Green Yellow and Blue are colors that are so universal for you can paint anything. And then what I do is I add some white to show the true underlying color. And this shows that this green leans towards yellow. And for an explanation on that, you can refer to the how to choose your colors tutorial, which explains, because if you have limited palette, you don't need 50, 60 colors. You can get it down to 15 and even less than that if you need to. Hansa Yellow Medium, I'll put that right here, is a yellow that leans towards orange. It's also transparent. I'm just adding some white here. And it's important that you do this because the colors will look differently when you do this versus just looking at it on video. And it doesn't take much time, but it helps you, I guess it helps you it helps you get connected to the paint that you're using. And then Burnt Sienna. Now, although this is supposed to be an opaque pigment, it's supposed to be opaque. I find that this is a little bit more transparent for me. You're also going to be careful when you put the water in your brush. You don't want to have too much water in there because it'll affect the color, or it'll affect the opacity. So you can see here, this is a nice reddish orange, red orange neutral. Okay, so now that we have those, and then white we don't really need to put down there. So my idea is when creating Sap Green, and this is the Traditions Sap Green, that DecoArt's really good for their professional paints, and even this line here and the fluid acrylics is that they have the pigment numbers on there. So I know exactly what pigments go into them, but sometimes you don't have access to those pigments. So in this particular Sap Green is that they use PR 101, which is pigment red, and I think of that as being transparent red iron oxide. I don't know. PR 101 is used for so many different things, so it depends on how it's actually processed in the lab. So for this particular example, because transparent red iron oxide isn't available in the premium acrylic line, then I'm going to use burnt sienna, and then I can add a little bit of matte medium to make it more transparent. May work, may not, but let's see what happens. So I'm going to make up the mixtures on the palette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with about 2 parts of burnt sienna, and this is where having a little bit of color mixing knowledge helps you with this. What I want to do is, because phthalo green yellow is so intense, I need to knock it down. I'm not going to add its complement, I want to add a neutral. So with about roughly 2 parts of burnt sienna, I'll add about roughly, maybe half to 1 part of phthalo green yellow. One of the phthalo colors are one of the most powerful pigments out there, so it'll go far, and even that, like, way too much. It'll go really far. So by itself, it ends up creating a very dark green. And let me just add white to that. Always add white. Mix it up. And I would say that's actually pretty good. Remember, the paints dry a bit darker, so that's actually pretty good. But it's not quite yellow enough. So what do? This one's where it gets easy, is that you just add a speck of yellow. Now, when you're doing your color mixing, I want to show you. And this sounds really basic, but it's so important, because when I see charts from my students and that, and I can see streaks of paints because they didn't clean the brushes properly. And especially with color mixing, you got to clean it properly, because you're going to be using this as reference. So you take your brush, get rid of the excess off the brush, rinse in bucket number 1, blot the brush, then rinse in bucket number 2 and blot the brush. Then when this gets so dirty, you just move this over here, clean this, dump this for fresh water, then start cleaning in this and this. That way you'll be cleaning less, because you'll be having to dump your water out less, and your brushes will always be clean. So with that mixture we already had here, I'm going to take a little bit of Hansa yellow medium and put that in there. That paint's already starting to dry, so let me just pull a little bit of that in here. And let's pick up a little bit. Actually, you know what? No. Let's do it first with this, without adding any medium, so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to put that over here. So this is the same mixture with a little bit of yellow added to it. And you can see, even though we use burnt sienna in this, you can see that it is still pretty transparent. I'm going to add some white to it now. Let's bring some more of that color in there. Doesn't need to be a lot. And this is where now you adjust and analyze. Is it yellow? Yeah, actually it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. I'm liking that. You can tell the difference. Now this could be because there's a little bit too much white, but I know it's not. It's because we added a little bit of yellow to that. Now let's add a little bit of matte medium to this. And now we have some further transparency. And this is where now you can just keep adding the matte medium. I avoid using too much water because it breaks down the strength of the pigment. And then you can just keep going with that to test the transparency. Okay, you can see that it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter the more more matte medium that we add because the white of the paper is showing through. Now the other thing that you need to do is when you're creating your paints, let me just make a little bit more of that up, is we create our value scale. So you're going to take your mixture, you just make up, there's the furnace is on and it's drying super fast. And we can come here and now we can create our value scale, which is by adding white. So even though I added a little bit of matte medium, the more white that we add to this, the more opaque it's going to become. So when you create your value scale, you're going to add white, just enough white so it gets a little bit lighter than the previous mix. And by doing this, by only using, we use really just 3 colors plus white, you can get a range of mixes, and then you can further alter them. Let's say you want to do something more than just sap green. You can either use more of the green, more of the yellow and less of the burnt sienna, and then more of the yellow, less of the green, less of the burnt. You can create all these different types of combinations. And these colors that I'm using, the pigments, they're core. They're available. They're standard. They're standard pigments that are available like all the time. It's not where a manufacturer is going to discontinue the line. A lot of more the trendy colors and pre-mixed fancy colors, I see those being discontinued more often. But it's always a good idea to know exactly how to color mix, because that way if something is discontinued, you're not having to figure it out. Learn right from the beginning, because by learning how to color mix using a limited palette, not only is it good for your brain to learn how to do that, especially if you're wanting to create more cohesive art, but you're saving money not having to buy a whole bunch of paints. I know that's not support the economy type of thing. I would rather you have less paint, buy better paint, and create more art. That's my goal. That's my goal. But create art. I get so upset. Well, not so upset, but I get sad when I hear somebody say they want to create art and they can't because they don't have the money for good supplies. Use what you have. Although I'm showing you this, even with the craft paint, you can get white, you can get a burnt sienna, you can get a yellow that leans towards orange, and the green you can likely find a green, just depending on the color. So just see what you have, and experiment. Do the charts and experiment. But you can see here now, so this is a transparency scale, and this is a value scale. Look at all the different ranges of color you can get. So now I know that, although I do have sap green in traditions, it is great for saving time, and it is consistent that if I do want to create something with portraits, let's say with the premium acrylics, that I know I can mix it myself. And then another tutorial I'm coming up with the fluid acrylics, the sap green mixture is different. So I'll show that, and then we'll go from there, because there's a pigment in that particular pre-mixed bottle that I don't have. So by taking these core colors, which are available almost everywhere, using these core colors, I can make up sap green that works for me. So I hope that this helps you with this, and the sap green is a nice mixture, and you can call it sap green, but it's a yellowish green, a semi-transparent to a transparent yellowish green that's not intense. It's more of a subdued green. And with this particular color, you can make it brighter by adding yellow to it. You can make it duller by adding more burnt sienna. All right, and the dulling of the burnt sienna is because burnt sienna is a reddish orange, and red is opposite the color wheel to green. This is where having some basic color mixing knowledge does come in handy. So in saying that, I would like to invite you to hop on over to my blog, and you can look up some other free tutorials I have there on color mixing. And don't forget to check out the one about choosing your palette colors to narrow your palette down to and I don't call black and white colors, they're just to darken and lighten values, but knock things down to under 15 colors, and you can make up so many mixes that other than something specific like transparent red iron oxide or quinacridone burnt orange, you will unlikely have to pull in colors from pull in additional colors. You should be able to get everything with that limited palette. Alrighty, so check out the blog for the other color mixing tutorials. And also, I would love to see the charts that you make up, regardless of what paint you're using, what brand, and try to come up with a close match. Take some pictures and post it in the comments below, or even, better yet, is to hop on over to the private Facebook group, post your color chart there, because it's a great community of people, and they'll be right on board, helping you with stuff, or giving their opinion of what they think, and critiques and support and all that stuff. It's a great group to belong to. All right, so I will leave you with that, and until I see you in the next tutorial, stay inspired.